meeting for February 21, 2022 will start. And our approval of January 24th meeting minutes will be required. And those members in attendance, have you had a chance to review the meeting minutes? And if so, I'll accept the motion to approve them.
Okay, this is Janet. I'll make the motion that we approve of the January 24th, 2022 minutes.
Do I get a second?
I'll second it. Sonia.
Sonia. All of those in favor of approval of these January 24th meeting minutes, please say aye.
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 And I just noticed Darren is here, so we are unanimous.
Okay. Yeah.
We're two to spare.
So we will have approved January's meeting minutes. And then we'll go on to our applications. I will let you know that we have application S 2022-04 that will not be heard tonight. It will be postponed to the next meeting. And then application on new business S 2022-08 has also been postponed. Now we'll move on with our old applications. S 2022-01 is for applying for a variance to the side yard setback. Elise, if you would like to
Yeah,
review this again.
just to kind of go through the procedural stuff. So after the presentation from myself, we'll have a raise hand to speak function. So if you can click on that to then have Matt will pull everybody up, and then we will unmute your mic when it's time to speak. So just kind of keep an eye out. Otherwise, yeah.
Excuse me, I'm not hearing that very clearly. You got something you can turn up or something? Because I'm already turned up pretty loud.
Yeah, give me a second.
They're going to use the raise hand function to recognize people who would like to speak. Did you hear me, Charlie?
Oh, yes.
Is this improved?
I hear you.
Okay.
Charlie, do you?
Well, that's a little better. I'm afraid I'm comparing her to you, Kim. You sound wonderful.
Yeah.
You're so nice.
But you're quite loud, clear, and that was better. So let me try that.
Yeah. I do have a fan running because my computer doesn't tolerate this very well sometimes. So you will get a little bit of background fan noise. So
But you sound just fine now. You sound just fine now. So here we go.
All right.
good. This is S-2022-01, which is a variance to 1660 Fishers Mill Road. I didn't put it on the presentation, but the applicant requested a variance to the side yard setback from 50 feet to 20 feet for construction of a storage building. The property is zoned A1 agricultural. It has approximately 12.5 acres, and staff recommends denial of the variance request. This is an aerial shot of the property. I'll kind of go into it further, but this property does have some floodplain in that rear part of the property line, north of the kind of line that bends through the facility or through the property. And then the southern side appears to be more for like horse pastures and agricultural uses. When we are considering variance applications, we stick to KRS 100.243, which is our findings requirement. We have a couple variance applications, so I have all of the slides have the variance form, but I'm just going to kind of review it pretty quickly here and then just generally kind of keep it in mind for going forward. When a variance is being considered, we have to find that the variance would not adversely affect the public health, safety, or welfare, nor alter the character of the general vicinity, nor cause hazard or nuisance to public, and will not allow an unreasonable circumvention of the zoning regs. In making these findings, the board must consider whether the requested variance arises from special circumstances which do not generally apply to the land in the general vicinity or same zone. The strict application of the provisions of the regulation would deprive the applicant of reasonable use of land or create an unnecessary hardship, and that the circumstances are a result of actions taken of the applicant taken subsequent to the adoption of zoning regulation for which relief is sought. And then we just also have to consider whether or not the variance is arising from circumstances that are a result of willful violations by the applicant. So we'll continue to reference this statute, and I just kind of wanted to read through the kind of block of text in the beginning here. So this is the placement of the property, or a placement of the storage structure noted in the red square. You can see it's kind of tucked away and in the rear of the property, close to the existing identified creek and floodplain. Again, the property is pretty flat from what all of our topographical records are showing right now. So there are a couple options elsewhere that would not be in a floodplain and would not require a variance. For reference, this is kind of a breakdown of the availability of land. The greatest photo that is, it is my left. I have no idea if it's everybody else's left, but that is the portion of the property that's considered non-floodplain. And that is a 7.68 acre property. While it is sloped, the sloping is typical of residences and agricultural properties in Scott County, and is typical of those that are in close proximity to a riverbed or floodplain. The central photo is just a picture of the acreage that is considered in the floodplain, roughly kind of clicked through. That is a 2.6 acre area of the property. And then the rear of the property is that kind of area beyond the floodplain, but not owned by an adjacent property owner, which is approximately 2.25 acres. In that northern portion of in the lefternmost photo, staff believes there's enough evidence to say that the variance would not really be required because there's enough land to work on elsewhere. And it is, while it does have some slope to it, it is not as significant as like being by a riverside slope. So flood Zone A flood hazard area is just a typical, it's at risk for 100-year floods. And there are construction standards for constructing in a floodplain. However, again, due to the size of the property and the available land that is non-floodplain and close on the side of the existing structures on that property, staff recommends that a relocation of the structure can be done closer to the road and out of the floodplain while also not being in the building setback lines. Again, while the approval of the variance would not adversely affect public health, safety, or welfare, there's not enough evidence to satisfy specifically KRS 102.43 subsection A, which is that the variance requests arises from special circumstances that do not apply, and that in subsection B, that strict applications of the provisions would deprive them reasonable use of the land. Again, there's a sufficient amount of land in the front, and there are structures in the front utilizing that land, but not taking up all of that land that that structure could be built upon without a variance. So staff recommends denial of the variance and kind of subject to kind of the findings here. This is the last slide I have for it.
All right, thank you. Have you heard from any neighbors?
I have not, no, other than the usual, what's going on type questions.
All right. Is the applicant in attendance?
I do not identify the applicant as in attendance.
All right. Do we have members of the board? Do you have questions or discussion?
Elise, what was the applicant's feedback? How did they respond to you recommending denial? What was their exact reason that they didn't want to build on area you suggested?
I hadn't heard anything in feedback from the staff reports that I sent out last week. They, after the previous meeting, they were kind of making calls about trees and everything in the area. However, again, there's enough evidence that like there aren't a lot of trees in that 7.6 acre portion that's south of the floodplain, and it appears to be pasture space. So I was a bit kind of misunderstanding what they were using that land for in the initial instance, and that like the floodplain isn't most of the property. So like there is feasible stuff, and putting this would be elsewhere would be kind of odd. And I just never heard back from them or any feedback or any kind of follow-up information, again, after reaching out to them regarding the application.
Charlie, do you have any comment either way?
I think this is perfectly correct. And I think as you recall, they had said last time, I'm sorry, the board said last time it was postponed, and if they wanted to submit additional information to demonstrate why that was appropriate and necessary. And I assume then nothing more was, I believe I understood, at least to say nothing was submitted. So no, I think she's absolutely correct.
Okay.
Okay, all right.
All right, I'll entertain a motion for this application.
I'll make the motion to deny S 2022-01 based upon staff recommendations.
And do I have a second
I'll second.
recommendation? All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Then denial of S 2022-01. That moves us on to S 2022-03 for amended conditional use permit for a commercial kitchen.
Thank you. This is a conditional use permit amendment to add to the existing conditional use permit for an occupation and to operate like a trail riding service at 265 Wrights Lane. It's zoned A1 agricultural and has approximately 2.57 acres of property, and staff does recommend approval of the application. This is an aerial shot of the property. I had to rotate it because it's like this very vertical property, or like it has a wide like north-south and very narrow kind of east-west. So I had to kind of flip it. So it is a little bit oddly shaped than it would be kind of appearing traditionally. But this facility currently operates as a trail riding service. I believe the applicant is here and she can kind of attest to more of the service provisions at that time. But she has kind of an existing office and stable services in that facility, a tack shop, etc. And then what she's looking to do is to construct a facility that I'll show a floor plan for in just a minute that would include the commercial kitchen operation that the amended conditional use permit is being applied for. So that red square there is kind of the rough location of where the facility is. It may be a little bit closer to the road, it may be a little bit further back, but roughly I could kind of place it around that area. So just south of it and closer to Wrights Lane, which is in the bottom right side of the corner for me, are kind of existing facilities, so barns and stables, as well as offices and storage spaces and parking. So there's kind of some pre-existing business functions on the property, and then this larger facility would service the whole business again and kind of offer an expanded permit. And mostly this is for the conditional, for the kitchen, because some of these things are already pre-approved. It's mostly just adding that kind of additional function to the existing permits. This is the proposed facility that I noted in red. I tried my best to get some contrasting colors, but after a while it's kind of difficult because everything looks a little bit the same and everyone's screen's a little bit different. So I'll kind of start in the upper left side, which is a horse stalls area. Besides that, just across from it is an activities and rec room. South of that, but kind of north of the yellow, purple, and orange areas is the kitchen in question that the conditional use permit is for. The area in yellow is the 2-story office space. The central area is, to my understanding, an indoor arena space. And then on the bottom side, there's the hay and feed space in that bright green, and then the tack shop in the orange. It looks a little bit red. I kind of tried to pick different enough colors, but again, everyone's screen's a little bit different, so it's hard to kind of point things out. So again, the referenced area is that kitchen space noted in red. Public and private parks are considered a conditional use in the A1 district, and they do have pre-existing conditional use permits. And one, actually I mentioned it, one development plan kind of doing some of the site structures and ideas for the site coming through. They have expanded and facilitated the business operation, and this conditional use permit would expand the use further to allow for greater amenities to be available. Again, this already kind of has business operations, and we are unaware of any kind of complaints from surrounding property owners or any individuals that have issues with the function of the business. So staff kind of concludes that this would not adversely impact the public health, safety, or welfare of surrounding residents. We do recommend approval of the conditional use permit subject to 5 conditions listed here. The first 4 of which are those typical of a conditional use permit. We do have a couple of those today, so I'll kind of just mention that right now. They're subject to all regulations, local and on local side, they shall comply with federal, state, and local regulations and permitting requirements, that the permit would become null and void upon sale or transfer, and that any changes to the conditional use permit would require the applicant to return prior to anything kind of noting. The last of which is to just require that the applicant would file a preliminary development plan with the Planning Commission prior to construction to that larger facility. At this time, and according to our records, I don't see something that kind of shows off this whole facility here. So it may be a newer development, or maybe our records just aren't updated online yet. But we would require some type of development plan, since it is a commercial related entity, and it does add a pretty notable amount of square footage to the property. And that's all I have.
All right. Is the applicant, she is present, right?
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Charlie, would you like to swear her in, please?
Yes, ma'am. Do you swear or affirm the statement you're about to give to be the truth to the best of your information and belief?
Can you hear me?
No.
Yes. Did you say yes?
Yes, I did.
Oh,
Okay.
good. Thank you very much.
Would you like to add any additional comments or explain to us your goal with this application?
Yeah, it's just a small kitchen. We plan on hopefully doing like breakfast and lunch, or like a little cafe type thing for our customers that come out. We have quite a few people asking for snacks when we come, so we thought we'd add it in if we could.
All right,
Kind of like Evans Orchard has their little snack bar.
I see.
Mhm.
Members of the board, do you have any questions, Ms. Goebel?
Charlie, you're okay with everything?
Yes. Elise mentioned earlier that wasn't aware of any problems or anything. I couldn't tell you how many years they've been there, but I'm not aware of any problems. This seems like a perfectly reasonable addition to the conditional use that they've got. So no, I think this is perfectly fine.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Do I have a motion from a member of the board on this application?
Yes, this is Janet. I'll make the motion that we approve file number or application number S-2022-0303 with the 5 conditions of approval by staff.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, Darren and Janet made the motion. All of those in favor of approving 2022-03, please say aye.
Aye.
S 2022-03 is approved. And thank you. Staff will be in touch with you.
Thank you.
We're not doing 04.
All right, then as we said, S 2022-04 is postponed. That moves us to S 2022-05. Applying for a variance for a side yard setback. Elise?
Yes, thank you. This is, as Kim mentioned, our application to the side yard setback from 50 feet to 18 feet for construction of approximately, I forget exactly the square footage, but it's a 1,000 to 1,600 square foot accessory structure at 1498 Leesburg Pike. The property is zoned A1 agricultural, and it is a 1.14 acre property, which, as most of our board members know, but that is considered an undersized lot of record by zoning standards. Staff does recommend approval of this application, and we'll kind of get into it a little bit further. This is an aerial shot of the property. The dotted line that kind of cuts into the property in the middle of those trees is the Bourbon-Scott County line. So this property is right up against the edge there. There's an existing residence, a garage, and then there's a driveway accessing Leesburg Pike, kind of just closer to that Bourbon County line. This is our variance statements here. I won't bore everyone with it again, but this is, as it is a smaller property and an undersized lot of record, it's just important to consider that this one does have additional restrictions that like additional buildable area than a traditional 55 acre property, which the 550 yard 50 building setback line is kind of made for this type of zone. For these undersized lots, it is commonplace that we do have to consider and review variances for these types of properties. So there's an existing structure there. It's underneath the red kind of box shape. So that would be replaced and then updated with a new item that would actually adhere to the existing power lines, non-buildable area that kind of bisects the property. You can see it kind of, it's noted, but it kind of goes straight through the pin, kind of crosses over the gravel driveway and then continues into Bourbon County. So this new structure would be adhering to the utility line easement requirements or any type of affiliated item. And it would be roughly in line with where the existing property was, or the existing structure was, but due to demo and everything, the variance would need to be reapplied for. So that's what we're kind of here for. It does adhere to the rear and front yard setback requirements. It's just that side yard from 50 feet to 18 feet that would need to be accommodated for, considered by the board. Again, this is an undersized lot of record, which is why staff kind of we're obviously considering it. The variance would not adversely affect the public health, safety, or welfare. If anything, it kind of offers a benefit in that it's an older building that may be an older building that is being torn down and being replaced, and it would be out of the easement, utility easement for the overhead power lines, and it would not alter the character of the general vicinity, or at least staff does not believe so. And again, due to its smaller size and in this kind of limited build area, this is something that is, while it does happen, and we've seen an application a couple months back on South Weisenberger Mill, it's not a very commonplace situation that you find these 1 acre, 2 acre lots that are zoned agricultural, and then without having to, if they need construction, getting a variance done for their properties. So with that considered, staff does recommend approval of the variance with the 3 conditions of approval that are typical of a variance, such that they are subject to all local regulations as well as federal, state, and local permitting and other requirements, and that the applicant shall obtain a building permit for the building inspection office prior to any construction.
Right? And you said you had not heard from any of the neighbors?
I have not, no.
Okay. And the applicant is Mr. Boyd. Is he present to speak? Charlie, will you
Yes.
swear him in, please?
Yes.
Thanks.
Mr.
Hello.
I'd like to clarify
Mr.
that David Griffith is the applicant, and he is here on behalf of the owner, John Boyd. So it's kind of like a 2-for-1.
That's right.
Mr. Griffiths, would you raise your right hand, please?
Yes.
Do you swear or affirm the statement you're about to make to be the truth to the best of your information and belief?
Yes, I do.
Thank you, sir.
Would you like to add any more than Elise has presented to us?
No, I think she did a good job of presenting what we're trying to do. When I spoke with building inspection about this project, the garage that's there is dilapidated and actually wasn't built very well, so it's falling down and needs to be replaced. We found that it was under the power line, and we weren't sure which came first, the chicken or the egg there, whether the garage was there and the line came over top of it or it was built illegally, we're not sure, but we wanted to remedy that. So the building inspection said, if you build on the same footprint, you don't need to even submit for this. You could rebuild the garage, but we did want to move it forward so it's outside of that easement. And so therefore, I just didn't want an inspector showing up and us not having this variance remedied.
All right. Any members of the board have questions or discussion?
I do not.
You good, Charlie?
Yes, ma'am.
I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion to approve S-22 2022-05 based on the staff recommendations.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Oh, who was that?
Which one?
Rachel? Like
Rachel.
Yeah.
Oh, Rachel.
All right, thank you. All those in favor of S 2022-05, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? S 2022-05 is approved for the conditional use.
No, the variance.
I mean, variance, sorry. I'm looking at the screen, sorry, for the variance. And then Elise will be in contact with you. That
Yep.
moves us on to the next portion of this property.
The other structure.
Yes,
This is a conditional use permit to operate a bed and breakfast out of the existing residence at 1498 Leesburg Pike. Again, it's zone A1 agricultural within 1.14 acre property. And staff does recommend approval of the bed and breakfast operations. Again, this is an aerial shot of the property. So what we're considering now is the existing residence that's around where the 1998 address is just south of. So it's staff was looking into some kind of previous conditional use permits as part of this process, and we did find one in 95 that had an approved bed and breakfast operation by previous owners at that point. And then since sale and transfer occurred and there's been likely a couple changes of hands, they've since obviously operated that and are now looking to kind of reutilize the property as a bed and breakfast. So I should keep this page. The anticipated number of bedrooms available for the bed and breakfast would not exceed 5, and that the rooms would be available for lodging in terms no longer than 15 days. Again, they're due to the high volume of rooms available, just with some small and older residential septic systems, there can be issues or capacity problems. So if this does get approved, staff does include a condition that the septic system would be reviewed by health department to ensure capacity for increased usage. I believe there's already, as part of the application information, the applicant already submitted some information regarding the septic system and its existing function, saying that it is still functioning, and I believe it is signed off by the health department. So it's just something that I included in there just to note that there would be increased usage of it, and that it just would need to be made sure that it's up to working function if it is approved at some point. On a much more interesting and not gross note,
right?
Food would be served out of the existing kitchen, and the health department would need to also sign off on that. So just making sure that everything is sanitary and safe. So that's included in condition as well. As part of the development, new concrete would be installed on the property, so or at least added or improved parking options. So you can kind of see outlined in green the driveway. It has that natural shape right now. However, the applicant is anticipating adding additional parking closer to the Bourbon County line. So on that, it's the eastern property line where that added parking is, and then kind of a turnaround just a little bit western more than the new garage structure that's being proposed and was just approved with that variance. So that would be additional parking that would service the residents as well as any bed and breakfast guests. So it's just something to also kind of consider there. They're going to be making a couple of site improvements. As there were no listed code enforcement complaints or other reasons to question the previous conditional use permit, staff has reason to conclude that new owner operation of the bed and breakfast would not adversely impact the public health, safety, or welfare of surrounding residents, and that the use would not alter the character of the general vicinity. And also just noting the specific section of the zoning ordinance in which the conditional use for bed and breakfast is found is also up there on the findings section. Based off of that, staff does recommend approval of the conditional use permit. And I believe it cuts off 2 of them on my screen, which means it's likely cutting off 2 on everybody else's screen. But there are 7 total conditions of approval. The first 4 of which are typical ones for conditional use permits. The 5th and 6th relate to the health department, just ensuring that the septic system and then the food operations are up to code and non-harmful to people. And then the 7th one, which is non-visible, is just that the 7th one is just that the applicant should register with the Tourism Commission and the Revenue Commission and obtain all required licensing related to bed and breakfast operations. So that's just the additional one there. It's included in the staff report as yes, condition 7.
All right, thank you. The applicant, we would like to listen to your comments, please. Charlie, do we have to swear them in again? We don't, do we?
Oh, no, same person? No, you're still under oath.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, we had determined that this would be a great location for bed and breakfast. As we got into the research on it, we didn't know that actually it had happened there before, which was even more of a reinforcement to that. It's an older home structure, which is a great visiting point for Kentucky. And this is the gravel drive that's existing will be in its spot and in the same place. We just want to added space for the parking, and we're going to be concreting that as well as new walkways to the existing home. So the garage will just be serviced for the family and allow additional parking in the other spots.
All right, thank you. Do we have any discussion or questions from the board members?
At least no comments or concerns or anything from neighbors?
No, I haven't heard anything from anybody yet.
Okay. Charlie, you good with everything?
Did I understand one of the first exhibits that a little piece of Bourbon County runs through this property?
That's correct.
Yes. Is any of this activity going to be on that Bourbon County portion?
No, it'll just be the driveway.
Okay. Another reason I was asking is there might have been then a need for an application in Bourbon County. If it's only a driveway, that would not require that, I don't believe. So in that case, no, I have no questions about this at all.
Okay.
To kind of add a comment really quickly, as part of the notification policy, I did reach out to the planning commission in Bourbon County or the planning staff in Bourbon County, and I received no comment from them.
Oh, very good.
Good, thank you. I'll entertain a motion for this application.
Kim, I'll move that we approve application S 2022-06, a conditional use permit for a bed and breakfast at 1498 Leesburg Pike, subject to staff recommendations.
Do I have a second?
Sure,
And I'll second.
Darren or Janet, whichever you
you
want
make
to
sure you take mine over Kim or over Janet's any day.
Okay. Anya and Darren. So all of those in favor of approving S 2022-06, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Then approval of S 2022-06 by the Board of Adjustments, and Elise will be in contact with you.
You're welcome, Janet.
Thank you, Darren.
Mhm.
And this moves us on to new applications.
Woohoo, you go, girl.
S 2022-07, applying for a variance to the side yard setback.
Yes, this is a variance to the side yard setback from 50 feet to 25 feet, as well as the rear yard setback from 50 feet to 25 feet for construction of a 2,700 to 2,800 square foot barn at the property address 472 Locust Fork Road. The zonage of the property is A1, and then this is a 5-acre parcel. Staff does recommend approval of the variance application. This is an aerial shot of the property. It looks pretty flat from here, but I believe I have an image including the topographical layout. You can see that it's pretty long and kind of a little bit narrower, but not terribly narrow enough to kind of fit a pretty nice sized residence and everything in the property. This is our variance statement. I won't entertain everybody. This is the application form that was submitted by the applicant. So the barn would go in the rear of the property, abutting that I believe it's the Quarles' farm, but I could be wrong on which property I'm referencing. It's not. But it'll be kind of closer to the existing farm that's to the rear of the property, and then there's residences on the west and east side. So it's just the placement here. When looking at the topographical layout, you can see that the front of the property does have that floodplain similar to the previous application, and but I'd like to note that there's further sloping towards that floodplain, that while it is expected, this seems pretty notable to drop from about 810 to 790 to approximately 780 at the road, and then to increase to as such to 820 and 830. And the placement of the structure is noted in that red box there, and it appears to be like the largest kind of flat area of the property. So again, this is something that, while we do expect some level of sloping variation, this seems significant enough to warrant proper consideration by the board, and maybe deliberation by the board for a variance at that location and some type of accommodation. The variance would not be noted from Locust Fork Road. It's in that rear part of the property, and the Locust Fork Road is lower than where the building would be placed. In addition, it would not impact the public health, safety, welfare of the surrounding areas, nor would impact the sight lines of surrounding property owners. And there's no reason to suggest that the application would result as a result of actions that would be considered a willful violation of the zoning ordinance. So this is just kind of everything here. As you noted, I kind of noted before, it is a pretty sloped portion of northern Scott County, and a section of it is within that Locust Fork floodplain. And due to those slopes toward the riverbed and that natural kind of topographical variation towards the riverbed, staff believe that there's reason to consider that the application and the variance requested does meet the findings requirement of that, specifically that the strict application of the provisions of regulation would deprive the applicant of reasonable use of land or would create a unnecessary hardship on the applicant. Given this, we have our staff does recommend approval of the variance subject to the 3 conditions of approval listed there. Again, these are the ones that are typical of a variance application. That's all I got.
All right, thank you. I see that the applicant is present. Charlie, would you please swear them in?
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Horstman,
Yes, sir.
raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm the statement you're about to give to be the truth, to the best of your information and belief?
I do.
Thank you, sir.
Would you please address or discuss what you plan to do? Anything in addition to what Elise has told us?
No, strictly, I just want to have a barn. We got 5 acres here. Plan to section off a pasture in the back at the rear of the house. Probably about a acre and a half. And I've got a couple of girls and just want to have a little mini farm.
All right. Do we have any questions from the board, Mr. Horstman?
I do not.
Elise, no phone calls or anything from surrounding neighbors concerning this?
I've spoken to them, and they are very kosher, and yes.
Good.
I haven't heard anything from any phone calls in or otherwise from our side of things.
Mr. Ward would let me know.
Charlie, you good?
Yes, topography is just about always a very good reason for this sort of thing.
All right, I'll entertain a motion for this application.
Okay, this is Janet again. I make the motion that we approve application number S-2022-07 for the variance to the side yard setback at 472 Locust Fork Road with the 3 staff recommendations of approval.
Do I have a second?
Second.
That's Rachel.
Yep.
All right. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
S-2022-07 is approved. And Elise will be in contact with you, Mr. Horstman.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's moving us on to S-2022-09. Variance at Malibu Canyon Road.
Thank you. So this is a variance to the side yard setback. Oh no, it's not to the side yard setback. This is a variance to only the side yard setback. I don't know why this is backwards, but it's the side yard setback from 50 feet to 42. The PowerPoint is incorrect. There's no changing of a setback to the rear setback, and the side yard setback is not going to 25. It is just 50 feet to 42 feet for construction of a 1,600 to 1,700 square foot accessory structure at the property address 108 Malibu Canyon Drive, a road. The property is zoned A1 agricultural, and it has 5 acres, and staff does recommend approval of the application.
She says ignore the backyard setback.
Sorry, cut out for a second. This is an aerial shot of the property. So the shot actually kind of conveniently shows a rough area of where the building would be. So it's south of the address 108, and then closer to Mr. Quarles' property, which is where I got them all mixed up. So this is our statement on findings. This is the information that's submitted by the applicant. The upper left corner, at least on my side, is the existing residence, and then the kind of square in the rough center is the structure with overhead doors and storage capacity, and then the dotted line shows the 50-foot setback. So it kind of bisects that structure a little bit and kind of cuts off that kind of back quarter. So that's why they're looking to that 42-foot setback. So when looking at the property, you can kind of see, and the square kind of covers it up, but there is a noted topographical variation in that property. And specifically where the residence is placed, you can see that it drops from about, or I believe it increases from 930 to like 935, 36. And then the structure has a retaining wall that's kind of shown here in line with the existing residence, maybe a little bit north of where the new structure would be placed. That would be kind of preventing that wall from kind of coming into the existing driveway and otherwise. So that structure would be in line with the home, but therefore, because the home isn't in line with the property lines, it would be kind of imposing itself on that property line. We have heard no feedbacks or comments from any surrounding property owners, though I did have an email just from Roger Quarles just requesting that the garage be used for personal uses, and that there would be no business use, including the storage of commercial items or machines of any type. So that's just the one comment from any surrounding property owners, which you may take and consider as you wish.
I was going to ask if you'd had any questions from neighbors.
Yes, well, that's the one. That's the one we heard from. Much to, I'm sure no one's surprised. He's very engaged. We do appreciate an engaged community member. So these are our 4 findings here. That the area is in a pretty sloped portion of Scott County, and that the placement of the structure would be in line with existing structures, and therefore would not technically be in line, or mostly in line with the property line. The approval of the variance would not adversely affect the public health, safety, welfare, nor alter the character. And if anything, it would kind of benefit to have that be in line and create a pleasing sight line, as opposed to kind of a disjointed, angled structure or some type of weird relationship or spatial relationship with the existing residence. And staff does believe that the application meets the finding requirements of KRS 100.243, resulting in a staff recommendation of approval subject to the 3 conditions typical of a variance application.
All right, thank you. Do we have any other questions or discussion from board members? I know the applicant is present. Charlie, would you like to swear Mr. Harbison in?
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Harbison,
Yes,
please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the statement you're about to give to be the truth to the best of your information and belief?
yes.
Thank you, sir.
Well, we're interested in your version of what Elise has explained to us.
Lisa's done a fantastic job of explaining exactly what I want to do. It's really just, my house, I believe, was built in like 1991, and I have a pretty large truck that won't fit in the garage, and I would like to just be able to put my truck and a lawnmower. I have a small tractor and an RV, and that's pretty much what I want to build the building for, and didn't really want to put it in the backyard. So because when I'm sitting on my patio, I didn't really want to look at a building. So where over on the side there would be the best place, for me to have a building. And I wanted to keep it as far away from the property line as possible, but I just couldn't get it any farther. So that was where it ended up.
All right. Members, do you have questions for Mr. Harbison? Charlie, do you have any comments or advice?
Well, once again, staff says topography is the principal consideration, and of course, the location of existing buildings. So no, I have no objection to that or any further questions.
All right. I'll entertain a motion for S 2022-09.
I'll make a motion that we approve S 22-09 based upon the staff recommendations.
Do I have a second?
I shall second for Darren.
All right.
Miss Janet.
And please vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Approval. Do we have any opposing votes? Then S 2022-09 is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Elise will be in touch with you. Then Elise, that takes us to S 2022-10.
Yep. So
All right.
this is a conditional use permit for a secondary single family dwelling for a family member at 6678 Owenton Road. The property is approximately 12 acres and is zoned A1 agricultural. It's in the very northern portion of the property, essentially in Owen County, but it's that weird kind of tip of the county. Staff does recommend approval of the application. This is an aerial shot of the property. Sorry, it's a little bit kind of weirdly saturated, but it's difficult to kind of get everything balanced. The property, the current address is at that intersection of Miners Branch and Owenton Road. And then there's a residence and I believe just one accessory structure on the property. And yeah. So circled in blue is the existing residence, circled in a brighter green is the existing accessory structure, and then the placement of the residence would be kind of in that natural, or at least appears to be a natural clearing of the trees and everything like that. Given that it is 12 acres, this property does have the density capacity to allow for it to have one additional residence on the property and no greater than that. Again, it needs to have that 5 acres or greater per residence on the property, and this does satisfy that for the one. It is important to note that it appears that there are kind of two driveways, roughly, at least to my knowledge, and that northern intersection. So facing the Sutherland Road, there appears to be some kind of aerial markings of some type of informal driveway, and then across Miners Branch Road, closest to that kind of Owenton Road and Miners Branch Road. I'm not aware of any additional permitting that was achieved to get what appears to be two entrances. I know that Scott County Roads is pretty particular with road placement on certain situations. So until Scott County Road gave any amount of permission, the proposed residents must access that existing driveway towards Owenton. It cannot create its own entrance for concerns on safety and vehicle access. There's been neighbors up throughout the area that were concerned about that tight intersection on Miners Branch, people driving with children and otherwise, that didn't want to add another road to, or another driveway that would be at like a blind turn or a blind curve. So to kind of manage that, we have the Scott County Roads Department approve any new entrances. So if they did want to have a new entrance, they must have that approval. And as part of a condition of approval, that would be something that would be required, and that would be satisfied. The residence would be a actually they're not on county roads. These are both numbered Kentucky highways, so these would require KYTC District 7 approvals. Miners Branches is 227 and Owenton Road is 1874 for kind of numerical references. So it's even further kind of requirements and controls is set forth by the state that any new entrances would need to be subject to their approvals, and then inherently it would be Scott County's, but it would be, you'd have to go to the district offices and get that approval. An address to the property would need to be obtained if the board was to grant the approval for the secondary residence. To my knowledge right now, I believe it is a mobile home or a manufactured dwelling. I could be incorrect, but due to the distance between the property at 1678 and the proposed location, it is unlikely that it would be financially feasible to have it on its own, have it connect to the existing septic system. So any new septic system that would be installed must have approval from the WEDCO department to ensure that the ground and everything is suitable for whatever septic system they want to install. That would be part of their process, and that's included as a condition of approval that would require that the applicant have that properly surveyed and insured to prevent any significant damage to water or otherwise in that area. There is a sufficient distance between the residences, so it does satisfy that setback requirements, and it does have a fair distance from all property lines. So staff does recommend looking at these findings. Sorry, I kind of got ahead of myself. We're going pretty quickly. I was not ready for this level. Let's get these things done. Section 4.12L of the zoning ordinance lists secondary residences as a conditional use in the A1 district. And staff believes that the proposed residence would fit in the character of the surrounding properties and would not adversely affect the public health, safety, or welfare of surrounding residences. Staff does recommend approval. This is a 2-slider because I couldn't fit it all on my normal computer, let alone this one. So these first 4 are our condition of approval typicals. So just subject to zoning regulations and subdivision regulations, all federal, state, and local regulation entities outside of us, that the permit would become null and void upon sale or transfer of the ownership of project site, and that the applicant shall return to board prior to any changes in approved conditions. The applicant shall these are where the detailed ones in. So the applicant shall only use the existing driveway to the project site for both the existing and proposed residences. Additional driveways shall not be used unless approved by Kentucky District 7 and then platted with the Scott County Courthouse, kind of formalizing the process. I mean, we can discuss that further. The single family residence needs to be at least 100 feet from current residences should this end up being relocated, and to eliminate the need for a variance should the property be subdivided. The applicant shall receive health department approval for the septic system for residents prior to being occupied, and that the applicant shall acquire an address for the dwelling, which is free of charge from the Planning Commission's GIS department.
Right, thank you. I think the applicant is present. Charlie, would you swear them in, please?
Yes, Ms. Lamb? Ms. Lamb? Ms. Lamb? She appears to be unmuted, but Ms. Lamb? And now she's gone.
Yeah.
We should have plugged in.
Well,
Right.
either,
If I had to move her to the panelist position to see if we can get her system to work properly, so it may work now.
is she? Oh, there she is. Well, she's still muted. Now,
There I am.
okay, Ms. Lamb?
Yes,
Yeah, would you raise your right hand, please? Would you swear or affirm the statement you're about to make to be the truth to the best of your information and belief?
yes, I do.
Thank you, ma'am.
And do you have anything additional to add that Elise hasn't explained?
I think she did very well. Needing this residence is for my daughter to stay on property so she can care for me. I have disabilities. They are a middle-aged couple with a child. There should be no problems. I get along with all my neighbors, so it should be pretty easy.
All right. Members of the board, do you have any questions? Discussion?
Everything good with you, Charlie?
Yes, the only thing that I heard out of all that that just shocked me is that Miners Branch is a state highway. But other than that, no, ma'am, I have no questions about this at all.
Okay.
I'll entertain a motion for S 2022-10.
I'll move that we approve S 2022-10, a conditional use permit for the secondary single-family residence at 6678 Owington Road, subject to all staff recommendations, conditions.
Do I have a second?
I'll say it's Janet. You're too late, Darren.
Y'all fight.
Everybody likes me.
All right, all of those in favor of approval of 2022-10, say aye.
Aye.
We have approved 2022-10 and Elise will be in contact with the applicant.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do we have any other business to discuss?
My last thing is that if you missed the ADU conference, but you really want to know what happened, they are publishing, I don't know if they're available right now, but they are publishing a link to watch the webinar information online. If you do end up watching it, just like take a selfie with you and the screen, just so we can have that as the record that you watched it, as opposed to just being like, yeah, I totally watched it, and be like, did you? So that is available for the House Bill 55 credits and training requirements, which I believe it's every, I would have to defer to you on how often you need to recertify and everything for that one.
Right?
Yeah.
Any other
I think,
discussion?
I think I did email you all the link to where they are available. The recordings are available now. Yeah, and like Elise was saying, if you all could just, if you watch them, just send us an email or a letter of some kind stating, how many hours, the subjects that were covered, the date that you watched them, things like that, so we can document that in your file.
Right. I think that's all that's on the agenda for this evening. The meeting is adjourned.
Do we have a meeting next week, I guess, next Thursday?
Yes, that's still continuing as scheduled. So the two that are postponed are subject to be heard.
Is that back in person or is that on Zoom?
It's in person.
Yeah.
Good.
So we tried. We were like, maybe not Zoom, maybe we'll be lucky. And then 2 freak storms in consecutive months on Thursdays really did throw everyone for a tailspin a little bit, quite literally, but.
All right. In that case, we'll see you